Previously, Nova and Isaac talked about their plans to make money, and they decided to start working on making spell scrolls. After lots and lots of math, they decided that making third level evocation scrolls would be the best option based on their individual skills. The DM quickly regretted her life choices. The two of them settled in to start working on making a fireball scroll for the rest of the day. Around lunchtime, Bertrand had another impromptu concert. Orcus the doll reappeared with a knife, and an excited Kess introduced the doll that might or might not be sentient to the spirit inside the lantern that definitely couldn't speak. It was very on brand for them. Late that evening, the group noticed that the guard presence around the guest house increased noticeably. About 20 minutes later, the Emperor and his husband arrived by foot. They all headed into Nova's cottage to talk, and Ellis started the conversation by explaining that his advisors had been lying to him for over a decade. He wasn't chosen to be emperor because of any great skill. He happened to be next in line for the throne, and he was very easy to control. For the first few decades of his rule, he was nothing more than a public face. His advisors did all the actual ruling. It was presented to him as the way that it worked. The emperor was a figurehead, nothing more and nothing less. Then he met Fran, and despite his advisor's protest, they were married. And Fran wasn't as easily swayed as Ellis. Fran started to point out the things he was seeing, and once he made Ellis aware of them, he couldn't miss them himself. The bloody history of the emperors was discussed, as well as Ellis's lack of an heir. He explained that he was under constant watch from several organizations, including Arspec. Ellis suspected that Arspec wanted to remove his crown, and probably his head with it, in order to put one of their own in charge of the empire. In the past, they'd first focused on deity-based magic users as being the wrong sort. Than nature-based magic users. He was fairly certain they were planning on turning on anyone who wasn't a book-taught wizard in the future. He also suspected that there had been arguments among the higher-ups of Arspec about whether wizards or sorcerers were the right type of magic users. Wizards were easier to control, so that's what they had chosen. Then talk turned to the hunt. Ellis and Fran had begun hearing rumors of people going missing about 5 years earlier, and they'd pieced together a fair bit over the years. They'd heard that the group took out a branch of it outside Port Arstone, and when they heard about the mind flayers, it seemed like a good excuse to meet them. Ellis's end goal was to bring down Arspec, but he suspected that one way or another it would be his last act as emperor. Whether it was because he'd die or because he'd have to step down, he wasn't sure, but he wanted to have an heir in place by that point. The conversation stayed on the topic of Arspec, and Ellis confirmed that he had no idea who was in charge of the organization. It was a rule that the emperor wasn't allowed to know. When Arspec was initially set up, the emperors at the time wanted to distance themselves from the bloodshed they'd be doing. They kept talking about Arspec, both sides sharing information, before the conversation turned towards the ball. Adria at least started working on some getaway plans, just in case things went badly. Kess offered to place some magical protections on both the Emperor and Fran the next day that would hypothetically ward against death, as long as they could get close to them before the ball started. The group also asked Ellis for a lock of his hair, so they could use it to scry on him if he was grabbed by anyone. Before Ellis and Fran left, the group shared a hero's feast with them, just in case. During the meal, Zarakir brought up the group meeting with Jacques and the fact that he knew people who could share information about what actually happened to the dragons on the continent. He and everyone else immediately got the impression that Ellis really loved dragons, although not in a Kess way. It was 100% his hyperfixation, though. Upon realizing that, Zarakir subtly opened a portal for Venator to come into the cottage. The high-pitched squeal that Ellis made at the sight of a dragon made Fran facepalm. Ellis then spent most of the rest of dinner talking with Venator and Zarakir and Draconic. And that is where we left off.